Penguin Random House Audio presents The Actor's Art and Craft. William Esper Teaches the Meisner Technique by William Esper and Damon DiMarco. Read for you by Michael Esper and Damon DiMarco.
For Suzanne, Michael, and Shannon.
Forward by David Mamet. Read by Nick Martorelli. 40 years ago, I got a lucky break. I got to study at the neighborhood playhouse, and I met a great teacher. Sanford Meisner was the head of the school, and we all took classes with him. But the great teacher was Bill Esper. Say his name to the decades of his students, and their eyes smile. I read his wonderful book, and I am taken back to my student days. The same words, the same Socratic questions, gentle and light, inviting the student toward a deeper understanding. I've spent my life working with actors. To do so, one needs but a few essential tools, the mastery of which is the challenging work of a lifetime. Be patient, be precise, be terse. Encourage, suggest, praise, listen. I was first exposed to these tools through the example of Bill Esper, and I am very grateful.
Prologue. If one really wishes to be master of an art, technical knowledge of it is not enough. One has to transcend technique so that the art becomes an artless art, growing out of the unconscious. Zen Master D.T. Suzuki. In my senior year of college, a theater professor took me aside and said, "I know you want to become an actor, and you have a lot of talent, but talent is like water. Without a vessel to contain it, it's useless." "What is the vessel for talent?" I asked. My professor answered, "Technique." "Fine," I said, "then I'll learn technique. Where do I go to do that?" "If you're going to bother at all, you'd better learn from the best and study with a master teacher." "Show me where the master teachers are, and I'll study with them," I said. And so it was that, days later, I borrowed a friend's car and drove to Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, home of the Mason Gross School of the Arts. I was going to meet Bill Esper. He wasn't what I'd imagined. I suppose I had this vision that a master teacher of acting would be a rakish man in a beret with a Mephistophelian mustache. Imagine how surprised I was to meet a kindly, quiet man with salt and pepper hair who waved me into his cramped office at Mason Gross's Levin Theater. This was the famous Bill Esper? Impossible! This man was a regular guy with a well-trimmed goatee and piercing eyes behind spectacles. We talked for about 45 minutes, and I'm sure I was trying too hard to make a good impression because I honestly can't recall a single word that Bill said, except this one part. Toward the end of our talk, Bill asked me,
Why are you interested in coming here? What interests you about studying with me?
I said, I studied the Meisner technique a little in college, and I got a lot out of it. Now I want to learn it, top to bottom. Bill didn't respond. He just sat there looking at me. Finally, very quietly, he said,
If you come here, you won't be learning Meisner technique. You'll learn my technique, the Bill Esper technique. And, God willing, if you leave here, you'll leave with your own technique. Do you understand this?
I didn't. Not really. But I was young. I lied. I nodded my head and said, yes. Now, more than 10 years later, Bill has asked me to visit him. The door to his studio swings open, and I walk through a short vestibule with red painted walls, heading straight toward his office. It's a cramped, busy little room, and the first thing I notice is the metal umbrella stand just inside the door. It holds 3 umbrellas, a battered vaudeville cane, a Louisville slugger, and a fencing foil. Surely, this is an actor's office. I glance up. Bookshelves cover the wall behind Bill's desk from floor to ceiling, the wooden slats bowed under the weight of his library. Spiral-bound notebooks are crammed onto the shelves at impossible angles. Manila files jut forward like stuck-out tongues, each bursting with what appears to be a lifetime's worth of scribbled musings. Tchotchkes from around the world sit on the shelves, too. Some of the items must have once served as props in a play. A leather armband beset with glass jewels, a feathered headdress, a white fluted vase with a single silk rose erupting from it in a brilliant red comet. A tiny metal box stands next to a battered blue-bound copy of Webster's Unabridged English Dictionary. Carved wooden horses stand here and there. They appear to serve as tiny guardians for this eclectic library. My teacher sits behind his cluttered desk, reading the morning paper. He glances up.
I hope this is a good place for us to work.
No other introduction, though we haven't seen each other in years. It works for me, I say. This office is obviously a sanctuary for the imagination, and therefore a fitting place to begin the task at hand. Will it work for you? Bill grins.
I'm not sure. I've never written a book before.
It's easy, if you know where you want to begin. Let's take a moment to introduce you. I reach into my bag for a microcassette recorder, which I click on and place on Bill's desk. First of all, why do you want to write this book? What do you want to say? Bill thinks for a long moment. Then he says,
I've been very fortunate to devote the past 40 years of my life to continuing Sandy Meisner's legacy. In that time, it's been my great pleasure and fascination to refine his technique and, in some cases, to extend it. I apprenticed myself to Sandy for 17 years when he was at the peak of his career. And then I worked nearly 30 years more to experiment with the technique, distill it, and apply it to areas Sandy wasn't able to, like the classics, for instance, plays with heightened language. And Sandy loved style and theatricality, but he never had the time to work in these areas in any extensive way as a teacher.
For a moment, let me play devil's advocate. There are lots of acting teachers out there. What have you got to say that's so special? Bill nods.
These days, most people who call themselves acting teachers do so because they offer helpful hints and anecdotes to performers who are desperate for real instruction. I don't consider that teaching. The way I see it, very few teachers have done what Lee Strasberg and Sandy did. Very few teachers have developed a concrete, step-by-step approach to training a truly creative actor. A system that takes an artist as raw material and builds the skills necessary for him to excel at his art from the ground up. Craft, technique, if you will, is vitally important to art, but so many people don't understand it. The biggest misconception I hear about acting technique is that it restricts the artist's talent. Ridiculous. Ultimately, technique does not constrain the artist's instincts, it frees them.
How does this apply to Meisner technique?
Learning to act is very much like building a house. Well, first, you have to pick a spot to build and clear the land. And then you must dig a good foundation and shore it up against the elements. These are the very first stages. Perhaps they're also the most important stages. If the foundation of a house isn't properly laid, the entire structure will eventually collapse under its own weight during the first good wind. In Meisner technique, we uphold this analogy by practicing a regimen of exercises which create foundation, a stable floor upon which we build our craft.
You generally work with actors over a 2-year period. In terms of this training, how do you lay the foundation?
Well, utilizing the Meisner approach, my students spend the entire first year of their training developing themselves into truthful acting instruments. If you like, you could say this first year is all about training the actor in the basic skills required for professional acting.
I'll play devil's advocate again. A lot of acting schools consider the basic skills for acting to be voice, speech, and movement. What do you believe? Bill waves his hand.
Voice, speech, and movement are external skills, very important to acting, yes, but not so important that you study them to the neglect of an actor's inner life, his emotional core. An actor without an emotional core is like a cardboard cutout of a human being. These days, the most common piece of advice you hear people telling a young actor is be yourself.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?